Hello viewers, welcome back to class. Welcome to Biology with Omotayo. Thank you for joining us again today. Thank you for always being on point. Yes, today we'll continue from where we stopped last class. Remember last class we started examining a new topic, and the topic was the cell. And that very last class we looked at the cell as a component of living organisms. We defined the term cell. We equally went on to examine the term living. What does it entail for an organism or for a thing to be termed living? So we looked at various characters and attributes that a thing must possess before it can be termed as living. These attributes examined went beyond just the normal Mr. Niger D characteristics of living things that we've been learning from elementary classes. There were much more to that. And so, if you seek to know more of what it takes before an organism or a thing, before a particular thing at all can be referred to as a living thing, please, I will encourage you to visit the last slide. Also, from that very last lesson, we equally began to look at the components of a cell. And from that lesson, we were able to draw a conclusion that a cell can simply be put to be protoplasm plus membrane. From that lesson, we went on to explain what protoplasm is made up of. Protoplasm is made up of two components. You can visit the last lesson to find this out. And we said the cell, simply put, can be referred to as protoplasm and membrane. Having done that, from that very last class, we agreed that we should be moving in to the cell theory. And so, right now, today in class, we will be making progress from there. The cell theory. This is where we'll be taking it from today. And so, a quick one. A couple of scientists actually worked on the cell, and haven't done a lot. A couple of postulations were put together, and coming from our previous knowledge on scientific methods, you know that you don't just start from a theory. Usually, it will have started from probably an observation, from probably an inference, yes, which is a product of an observation that would now have been subjected to further grouping, classifications, after which probably an hypothesis is postulated, and from the hypothesis postulated, experiments are designed. From the experiments designed, experiments are being carried out, and then results obtained. Where result is accepted, then a progress is made on to further retest, and where the result remains the same, then a theory is obtained. After a theory is obtained and further confirmed, then the theory progresses to become a law or a principle. And so, from science classes, we've learned that theory, simply put, is an extensively tested and proven to be true hypothesis. So, we want to look at theories that have been put forth with regards to the cell. Number one, it is said that all living things are made up of a cell. That is the first. Okay, so all living things are made up of a cell. Secondly, the cell is said to be the basic structural and functional unit of all living things. Okay, and then thirdly, it is also said that new cells arises from pre-existing cells. I repeat, new cells arises from pre-existing cells. These three makes up what we call the cell theory. And as I said much earlier, several scientists work together to put this together. And so we will move on and look at the contributions of various scientists to the concept of the cell, to the discovery of the cell, to the discovery of the plant cell, the animal cell, the protoplasm, and so on. Come along with me. As I have said, we'll start looking at the contribution of various scientists to the concept of the cell, and we will take it chronologically. We will be starting with Robert Hooke. Yes, Robert Hooke in 1665 discovered the cell. Yes, he is a British scientist who examined the cork, and having looked at the cork under a compound microscope, discovered that there were unique arrangements of components compacted together to form what he is having with him, that is being referred to as a cork. He viewed it and could see little chambers. He referred to them as cavity. And so, starting from there, he was identified to be the first person to discover a cell. So, number one here, I am having Robert Hooke. Okay, from here we move on. We move on to Felix Dujardin. Felix Dujardin is equally a French biologist. He examined thin slices of the cork, and then he discovered that the said cavities earlier identified by Robert Hooke have components. Yes, and then he went on to name these contents sarcode. And this very work of Dujardin was carried out in the year 1835. Okay, he discovered contents in the cell, and he went on to name it sarcode. Afterward, we have Mathias Schleiden. Matthias Schleiden in the year 1838 went on to examine a thin slice of a plant cell, a thin slice of a leaf. And from the work of Mathias Schleiden, he was able to come up with the discovery of the plant cell. So in 1838, Mathias Schleiden discovered the plant cell. Afterward, another scientist known as Theodor Schwann went on to carry out extensive study on cells from animals. He was a German zoologist, and so it is always ascribed to him as the one who discovered the animal cell. That is Theodor Schwann, 1839. If you take note, just a year in between. So the plant cell was discovered earlier than the animal cell. And then when you look at this word, Schwann, you will quickly have a recall as a biology student of Schwann cell under nervous system when you are doing the diagram of a nerve and you come across some components being named Schwann cell. The same scientist further went on to work on the nerve cell. So we'll move on from here to examine another scientist that worked on the cell and had contributed to the concept of the cell theory. In continuation, the fifth scientist that contributed to works with regards to the cell is Purkinje. Now, Purkinje went on to carry out a few other engagements with the sarcode that was earlier discovered by Felix Dujardin. He went on to carry out further study, and he came up with rather a new name. So Purkinje was the first scientist to name cell content as protoplasm, and this work was carried out in the year 1839. He gave the name protoplasm as against sarcode that was earlier named by Felix Dujardin when he discovered that the cell actually have content, and this was done in the year 1839. A quick one, we move on to the sixth scientist that equally worked on concepts of the cell, and that is Rudolf Virchow. Okay, Rudolf Virchow. Now, Rudolf Virchow in the year 1855. In the year 1855, he was actually a German biologist. He stated that all cells comes from pre-existing cell. Just like earlier when we were looking at the cell theory, you will agree with me that that was the third point under the cell theory. He postulated and worked to prove that all cells comes from pre-existing cells, either by cell division or as in a form of reproduction. So within the stay of our scheme, you will discover that altogether we've examined about 6 scientists that contributed in one way or the other to the concept of the cell, to the postulation of the cell theory, and the confirmation of basics that are associated with the cell theory. Quick list of the 6 scientists examined so far. We examined Robert Hooke and his work in 1665, went on to look at Felix Dujardin and his work in 1835, after which we looked at Mathias Schleiden and his work in the year 1838, before moving on to look at the works of Theodor Schwann in the year 1839, and then Purkinje 1839 as well, and then lastly Rudolf Virchow in the year 1855. It had been taken chronologically. Now a quick one. By the time we return for our next class, we will be looking at forms in which living things exist. Some living things exist as independent cells, others exist as colony, some exist as filament, others exist as group of cells, while some are even components. Okay, they are some are advanced organisms, complex organisms that are made up of multiple clusters coming together of countless and large chunks of cells. So when we meet next class, we'll be looking at forms in which living things exist. However, before we step out of this class, permit me to just give you a guide on a few facts with regards to the cell. Please take note. The smallest cell is a bacteria. In fact, mycoplasma. Yes, the smallest cell is mycoplasma. Mycoplasma is a bacterium. Okay, and then the largest cell is an ostrich egg. Yes, the largest cell of an animal known is an ostrich egg. And then the longest cell known so far is a nerve cell. And then the largest cell in human body, the largest cell in the human body is the female ovum. Yes, the female egg that is released during ovulation. It is multiple times larger than the sperm cell. And that brings us to the conclusion, because the smallest cell in the human body is the sperm cell. Thank you for staying this long with us. Thank you for joining us on this channel, Biology with Omotayo. We will continue from here when we meet next class, starting from forms in which living things exist. Please endeavor to join us next class. Endeavor to like the video, endeavor to share the video, endeavor to inform others as well. Come along and let us build a community of learners doing lots of wonders when it comes to academic exploits, to ensure that we bring about a better society of learners. Thank you and see you next class. From the intricate working of the cells to classification of living things, from the method